Chapter 13 of Masters of Space. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. Masters of Space by Edward Elmer Smith, a.k.a. E.E. Doc Smith and Edward Everett Evans. Translated by Robert Cicchinelli, Stephen Blundell, and the online distributed proofreading teams. Chapter 13. For many weeks the production of Arden warships and missiles had been spiraling upward. Half a mountain range of solid rock had been converted into fabricated super steel and armament. Super dreadnoughts were popping into existence at the rate of hundreds per minute. Missiles were rolling off the ends of assembly lines like half-pint tin cans out of can-making machines. The Strat warcraft, skeletons and missiles, would emerge into normal space anywhere within 1,000,000 miles of Ardbor. The Arden missiles were powered for an acceleration of 100 gravities. That much the Kedy brains, molded solidly into Teflon-lined, massively braced steel spheres, could just withstand. To be certain of breaking the Strat screamed, an impact velocity of about 6 miles per second was necessary. The time required to attain this velocity was about 10 seconds, and the flight distance something over 30 miles. Since the Strats could orient themselves in less than 1 second after emergence, even this extremely tight packing of missiles, only 60 miles apart throughout the entire emergence volume of space, would still give the Strats the initiative by a time ratio of more than 10 to 1. Such tight packing was of course impossible. It called for many billions of defenders, instead of the few millions it was possible for the Omans to produce in the time they had. In fact, the average spacing was well over 10,000 miles when the invading horde of Strat missiles emerged and struck. How they struck! There was nothing of finesse about that attack, nothing of skill or of tactics, nothing but the sheer brute force of overwhelming superiority of numbers and of overmatching power. One instant all space was empty, the next instant it was full of invading missiles, a superb exhibition of coordination and timing. And the Kedy control, upon which the defenders had counted so heavily, proved useless. For each Strat missile, within a fraction of a second of emergence, darted toward the nearest Oman missile with an acceleration that made the 100 gravity defenders seem to be standing still. 1 to 1, missiles crashed into missiles and detonated. There were no solid or liquid end products. Each of those frightful weapons carried so many megatons equivalent of atomic concentrate that all nearby space blossomed out into superatomic blasts hundreds of times more violent than the fireballs of lithium hydrate fusion bombs. For a moment even Hilton was stunned, but only for a moment. "Kedy," he barked, "get your big stuff out there. Use the boosters." He started for the door at a full run. "That tears it. That really tears it. Scrap the clam. I'll board the Sirius and take the task force to Strat. Bring your stuff along, Skipper, as soon as you're ready." Ardan super dreadnoughts in their massed thousands poured out through Ardbor's one-way screen. Each went instantly to work. Now the Kedy control system, doing what it was designed to do, proved its full worth. For the weapons of the big battle wagons did not depend upon acceleration, but were driven at the speed of light. And Grand Fleet operations were planned and were carried out at the almost infinite velocity of thought itself. Or rather, they were not planned at all. They were simply carried out immediately and without confusion. For all the Kedys were one. Each Kedy element, without any lapse of time whatever for consultation with any other, knew exactly where every other element was, exactly what each was doing, and exactly what he himself should do to make maximum contribution to the common cause. Nor was any time lost in relaying orders to crewmen within the ship. There were no crewmen. Each Kedy element was the sole personnel of, and was integral with his vessel. Nor were there any wires or relays to impede and slow down communication. Operational instructions, too, were transmitted and were acted upon with thought's transfinite speed. Thus, if decision and execution were not quite mathematically simultaneous, they were separated by a period of time so infinitesimally small as to be impossible of separation. Wherever a Strett missile was, or wherever a Strett skeleton ship appeared, an Oman beam reached it, usually in much less than 1 second. Beam clung to screen, caressingly, hungrily, absorbing its total energy and forming the first stage booster. Then, 3 microseconds later, that booster went off into a ragingly, incandescent, flaringly violent burst of fury so hellishly, so inconceivably hot that less than 1,000th of its total output of energy was below the very top of the visible spectrum. If the previous display of atomic violence had been so spectacular and of such magnitude as to defy understanding or description, what of this? When hundreds of thousands of Kedys, each wielding world-wrecking powers as effortlessly and as deftly and as precisely as thought, attacked and destroyed millions of those tremendously powerful war fabrications of the Stretts, the only simple answer is that all nearby space might very well have been torn out of the most radiant layers of S. Doradus itself. Hilton made the 100 yards from office door to curb in just over 12 seconds. Larry was waiting. The car literally burned a hole in the atmosphere as it screamed its way to Ardane Field. It landed with a thump. Heavy black streaks of synthetic rubber marked the pavement as it came to a screeching, shrieking stop at the flagship's main lock. And in the instant of closing that lock's outer portal, all 20,000 plus warships of the task force took off as one at 10 gravities. Took off, and in less than 1 minute went into overdrive. All personal haste was now over. Hilton went up into what he still thought of as the control room, even though he knew that there were no controls, or even any instruments anywhere aboard. He knew what he would find there. Fast as he had acted, Temple had not had as far to go, and she had got there first. He could not have said, for the life of him, how he actually felt about this direct defiance of his direct orders. He walked into the room, sat down beside her, and took her hand. "I told you to stay home, Temple," he said. "I know you did. But I'm not only the assistant head of your psychology department. I'm your wife, remember, until death do us part. And if there's any way in the universe I can manage it, death isn't going to part us. At least, this one isn't. If this is it, we'll go together." "I know, sweetheart." He put his arm around her, held her close. "As a psych, I wouldn't give a whoop. You'd be expendable. But as my wife, especially now that you're pregnant, you aren't. You're a lot more important to the future of our race than I am." She stiffened in the circle of his arm. "What's that crack supposed to mean? Think I'd ever accept a synthetic zombie imitation of you for my husband and go on living with it just as though nothing had happened?" Hilton started to say something, but Temple rushed heedlessly on. "Drat the race. No matter how many children we ever have, you were first, and you'll stay first. And if you have to go, I'll go too. So there. Besides, you know darn well that they can't duplicate whatever it is that makes you Jarvis Hilton." "Now wait a minute, Tempy. The conversion
suggest the conversion," she interrupted triumphantly.